Hey, Quinn, welcome to the show.
Hello, it's good to see you.
It is so good to see you. You were like one of my oldest mentees, not in terms of age, but like in terms of like long-term mentoring.
Well, I always love the way that we met in the parking lot going to the first TMC Alpha. Do you remember that?
Oh, it's coming back to me now. Yeah, I do remember that now. Yeah, we
Yeah,
were
I was,
parking and we were gonna walk into an event. How creepy was I? Was I super weird just
it
approaching you?
was, yes, it was awesome. I was like I was holding a brief, like my Cali hard case,
Uh-huh.
and then you're like, "Are you a founder?" and and I was like, yeah, or like, "Are you a startup founder?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he's like, "Are you going to the TMC Alpha event?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then we kind of like had some casual conversation. You talked about Capital Factory, and I was like, "Wow, what a woman to meet in the parking lot." And and then we walked in, and you were having like, I think like maybe your reservation for TMC Alpha didn't go through or something random. And so I went in, I was like, "Do you want me to save you a seat?" And I felt so silly saying that like as an adult, and like, I just met this like person, I'm gonna save them a seat. I don't even know. And I was like, "There's probably plenty of seating. You probably don't need to save a seat." But then yeah, we sat next to each other, and
Uh,
I loved that TMC Alpha
that was a really good
talk.
event.
That
It
was
was like
amazing.
Dr. Billy Cohen,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Taking me back. Taking me back. I'm just this
Right.
creepy investor in parking lots looking for a female founders carrying briefcases that I know med devices are in.
Right.
Oh man. Well, you are one of my favorite mentees. I love seeing projects continue. And we want to start though with your background. So we always love hearing the journey. What did you study? What did you do as a career first? And like, how did you end up here?
Yeah. So I went to the University of Houston, industrial design, uh, College of Architecture for industrial design. And yeah, and then, sorry, I'm totally like freaking out. Okay. Are things allowed to be clipped out?
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
totally.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm gonna like turn off the screen so I don't look at my face. Okay,
Yeah.
that's way better. It's more of just like a conversation. Okay, so I went to the College of Architecture and Design at the University of Houston,
Mhm.
and I graduated with the Bachelor of Science of Industrial Design. And well, I kind of want to backtrack because Cali really started my junior year of college.
Mm,
It was one of my studio projects,
okay.
and um, at the end of it, all of our professors were like, "You really have something here." And that inspired myself and my partner at the time, just another one of my studio mates that worked with me on it. He is now doing YouTube full time. You should check out his website. I think it's
Oh,
Ronald Finger. And yeah, and then over the summer, we applied for a whole bunch of design conferences or design competitions. And we didn't get a lot of them, but we got one of them. And that's all we really needed to just like inspire us and keep pushing forward. After that, it was my senior year, and in October, I got to go to Barcelona to present Cali at that design conference.
wow.
Um, Cali was one of the top 10 in the product design category for Reshape 19. And it's a international Barcelona design competition
Okay.
for wearable devices, whether they're for fashion or for like medical reasons. So
Mhm.
that was amazing. It was so amazing. And, sometimes you just have to ask. And so I asked my College of Architecture and Design in the Honors College. And so the whole trip was free. And I
Oh
got to go
my God.
and,
I love that advice. Sometimes you just have to ask. I
yes.
love that. I ask all the time. of all the things, because many times you can go, right? Get into
Yes.
conferences for free if you just ask. Like I in college went on a trip to Belize for a tropical marine ecology course. So I went to Belize for 2 weeks and did coral reef research. I don't come from money. I could have never afforded that. But I asked the
Yeah.
professor, like, are there scholarships? And she was like, you know what? There is a scholarship. Here's money. And I was like, oh, awesome. You just,
That's so amazing.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And speaking of getting into conferences for free, the guy I sat next to on the plane was going to a different conference, the IoT international conference or something in Barcelona. It was basically like my conference was over here and his was like on the other side of the building, like, but it's a really big building. Um, and yeah, he got me a free pass
Hell
into
yeah.
that conference as
Yep.
well. So
So awesome. So you
yeah, so
go
it's
to Barcelona, you get all this validation, and then what happens?
yeah, so we actually won a recognition of like basically fourth place.
Mhm.
Um, but we got honorable mention. That was it for Cali because we actually got presented to designers there and everything. So fast forward, it's senior year. I have to work on my thesis. Cali is still like in the behind scenes of my mind. Like I still want to do this and I still think it's good. And my last semester of college, I take an amazing business design class by Kelly McCormick. Um,
Kelly McCord,
and
I love her.
yeah,
Love that lady. She's an amazing professor at University of Houston. Yep.
seriously. Yeah. And this was actually her first time teaching that class. And I was just obsessed with it. And I remember um, scheduling time with her because there was something called Pitch Madness happening in March, pitch competition. And I was like, well, maybe one of my products could be in this. And she's like, yeah, totally. And she got her friend Liana in the room and I pitched again to them about Cali and my thesis, but it was mostly Cali that they were really, really interested in.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then that just really gave me really big encouragement. And then that's when they told me about Red Labs. They're like, yeah, do Pitch Madness, but also have you heard about Red Labs? So
And for
that
our
was
listeners,
something.
what is Red Labs?
Yes, Red Labs is a startup accelerator based out of the University of Houston. It's a summer program. Usually we get to pick an awesome co-working space in Houston. I know last year it was online. I was one of the mentors there. But it's so amazing. It literally changed the I guess like the direction of my
Yeah. Of
yeah of what I was doing. Yeah, in Cali,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sometimes accelerators can be a real waste of time, and it makes me very, very angry. I
Yeah.
have a lot of emotion about some negative emotion about some accelerators because I feel like it stunts growth. But there are some programs that are absolutely critical. And Red Labs of University of Houston is a fantastic accelerator because it's really about people, really innovative college students with an idea early stages, and that's really when the help is useful, and it's in it quite literally an acceleration and not a stunt of growth.
Yeah. And I think especially since it's for students and their ideas, it's a starting step. It like I know startup, but yeah, because that's exactly what it was for me. And at that point, I'd had a conversation with my partner, studio mate, and was like, "Hey, do you want to do this or not?" And he said, "No, but you go ahead. I'm fully supportive, like you doing what you need to do."
Yeah.
So usually, when you apply for Red Labs, you're supposed to have a team. And I was like, okay, well, I don't have a team. I can't apply. I also totally messed up at Pitch Madness. Like I forgot to use my clicker and it's a 2 minute pitch and you cannot recover from a 2 minute pitch.
Oh,
So like I was like after Pitch Madness, I was like, I'm done, and I think Kelly or Liana or both like reached out to me and like, hey, I haven't seen your Red Labs application, or you didn't, or maybe I'd already applied, but I hadn't signed up for an interview slot.
mhm.
And they just that last little push of like, hey, you can still do this by yourself. no matter what happened at Pitch Madness, keep like, let's do this. I know that like you'll be good for this program. So yeah, I did that, and the interview went really, really well. It was awesome to see Stephen Wilbur again. He was one of the speakers in my class from Cali, and he's one of the main people that helps run Red Labs as well. So he was in that interview, and I just kind of got to know him, and he learned more about my company. I got some really good feedback from him already, like, off the bat. Yeah, and then the summer starts. I graduate and I don't breathe, I think I graduated, and then it was my best friend's wedding, and I missed like the Red Labs awesome introduction day because it was the same day as the wedding. So like that kind of sucked because I was like, oh man, but also beautiful wedding, maid of honor, need to be there. Um, and then the next week I was like, let's go, and started that accelerator and started showing up to all the classes and just loving it. And also loving being downtown Houston and why am I forgetting the name of that place?
Station Houston.
Station Houston, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was like a dream. I was wearing, I was dressing up and feeling like, because I don't dress up for working at a wood and metal shop, really. I wear a polo and jeans. Yeah. So, I mean, it was just such a fun, amazing summer and very educational summer. I feel like I worked really hard. And the thing I always say about Red Labs is I literally pretended to be a CEO and founder of a company for a summer, and I came out a CEO and founder of a company.
Make it till you make it is absolutely real. I remember my first company, people were like, oh, are you going to found this company? You're going to start this company? I'm like, well, I'm a scientist. Like, I'm not a business person. I don't know if I'm a founder.
Yes.
I think I'm a really good co-founder. I'm a good, and people are like, what are you talking about? Like, you're smoking crack because you are a founder. And I can't even, looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe how long of a time I was actually insecure about whether or not I was a leader or not. And it's like, obviously, but it wasn't until I started faking it. And then I was like, oh my God, actually, I'm not really faking anything. This is totally who I am.
Yeah, exactly. That was just so crazy. And then another, meeting with you at the Bayou Startup Showcase, you made both me and my mom cry when you gave us the golden ticket to the Capital Factory.
So for our listeners who don't know, I was working at Accelerator Venture Fund Capital Factory, and we have these golden tickets. It's like 3 months of free mentoring. And so I gave Quinn, the founder of Cali, a ticket in front of her mom, and they cried. And I felt like the most influential woman in the world. I'm changing lives. I'm giving away golden tickets. So special. And what I'm hearing a lot in your story is like so many times it sounds like a lot of women in particular, were reaching down and saying, hey, Quinn, come over here. Over here. And like, that is like totally my mission today, is to do that to others, because I know it was done for me too. And a lot of times that's all we need is that email, hey, I haven't heard from you, like really interested still, like, and we don't know what kind of dark place that founder could be in, potential founder, right, could be in.
Mm-hmm.
And that email, that text, that like conversation in the parking lot could be the thing that makes them be like, damn, maybe I got this,
Yes.
Awesome. Well, let's get into what is Cali
Okay.
Battle. So what is it?
Yeah. So Cali is a medical device company, and we help people that suffer from vertigo complete therapeutic maneuvers that help alleviate their symptoms.
What is vertigo?
Yes. So vertigo is, so vertigo is the widely known term, but what we help with specifically is BPPV, which is benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. And I don't have to get into too much like nitty gritty there. Maybe I'll get into a little bit of the science. So a lot of people know what vertigo is, and it's this immense dizziness. And and you're basically completely debilitated from doing anything. And I'll kind of talk about like the symptoms of this. If you can imagine, you just came off a roller coaster. Some people get vertigo because of heights and that kind of stuff, and roller coasters and those kinds of spinning rides. But other people actually just get it on a daily basis because of an inner ear issue.
Okay.
And
That's
yeah,
what the BPPV is?
yes. So it's actually like an invisible disease because like you can get as many MRIs and it'll never show up. Like you can't.
Really? So then how's it
Yeah.
diagnosed?
So that's actually one of the biggest issues, is that if your doctor doesn't know about BPPV, it's really hard to diagnose.
Oh.
And I can talk about this with actually one of my friends at work. She came up to my desk one day and she told me about her lightheadedness, and then she started describing BPPV, and I was just like eye-awed, like wide-eared, listening to her, trying not to interrupt her, being like, I have a company about this. But so I just like listened to her whole story, and I've got to talk to her a bit more about it today. But you go to your primary care physician, or maybe you go to emergency care, you have dizziness, they might think you're having a stroke. They might think that you're having a heart attack. There's all these different things. They'll make you do all these really expensive tests. This happened to another friend of mine. And then at the end, they're like, we don't really know what you have. Or maybe they say, like in Elizabeth's case, they say, you have vertigo. Here's some steroids. Go home.
Okay. You're laughing. So steroids is probably not the right treatment for BPPV.
No, like it's just drugs. It's a sedative. It's just like, oh, here's how you can feel numb and maybe feel better, but once the steroids wear off, you're not gonna feel better.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the biology of it then. So it's not something you look on an MRI. It kind of manifests in like a dizziness, lightheadedness thing. So what the heck is happening? And you're saying steroids can't fix it. So what the heck is happening?
Yeah. So BPPV is an inner ear issue, and there's and this I'll say it in a couple different ways, but it's calcium carbonate buildup in your ears, and everyone has it, and it's usually like set in place. But as you get older, or if you get a concussion, or if something is happening in your ear, in your inner ear, there's a lot of different reasons for it. Those calcium carbonate crystals can actually get displaced in your inner ear. And then they start to make their way into the semicircular canals. And let's say that you move your head at a kind of quick angle, like, or you're bending down, you're gardening and you're bending down to garden, and you lift your head up suddenly. Then you start to experience vertigo because the crystals start to actually brush against little hairs in your semicircular canals. And that's what causes immense dizziness and complete debilitation.
Oh my gosh. So what I hear you saying is that we have calcium crystallized in our ears. Normal. It's there. It's usually sedentary. It just sits there. Something happens, aging, concussions. I hope we get into some more effects of how it gets dislodged. But essentially you move around and it's like a little ski balls in your ears, and they hit the inner ear hair, which is what is actually sensing balance. So you quite literally it's like as if you really are upside down on a roller coaster, because like your body doesn't know any different, right?
Exactly. You can't walk, you can't even sit down without falling to the side, and if you're laying down, you feel like you're flying, you get no relief.
Wow. So here now I'm going to share, my mom had a season of vertigo, and this poor woman, she called me, she said, oh my God, Britt, I just laid in bed and I am crying because I'm pretty sure I thought a stroke. and she eventually went to doc. She found out she had vertigo, but she said like vertigo. No. I was dying. Like something was wrong because she was laying in bed and she was like, it was like the world was spinning and I was sick and nauseous. And then a few incidences after that. I mean, I hate to laugh, but she was like, she kept falling down in the bathroom stall because every time she went to sit down, she would get the like vertigo attack. She'd call it an attack. And she would like fall over, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, mom, like, this is terrible, you know, like, and who knew how common it was? I didn't know.
Yeah.
So how common is it?
Yes. So, find my statistic. I guess I have the more common, and I have the women's statistic right on the dot, but there is 24.6 million people who suffer from BPPV in the United States.
In the United States alone, over 24 million.
Yes.
Wow. That's like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And if we have 300 million, that's a lot. That's like 5% at least. And so is it usually older people? Does age have something to do with it? You said
age definitely has stuff to do with it. So the people who we see that have BPPV the most are people over 40.
Okay.
I would say that that's like when it really starts to peak. That does not exclude people younger than that, I assure you. But it's there's a couple different things, and there's really interesting stuff that we'll talk about later, just specifically about women. But for, you know, males and females, like, you know, your inner ear is starting to get older as your body is, you know, and stuff starts to deteriorate and stuff starts to you know, dislodge those crystals in your inner ear. And it doesn't happen to everyone, but it happens to a lot of people. I feel like every conversation I have with someone, they're like, oh yeah, my aunt, my uncle, my sister.
Yep.
You know,
my mom. Yep. Definitely. Well, let's dive into this is the FemTech Focus Podcast. So let's dive into the women. Is this something we would consider disproportionately affecting women?
Yeah. So there's honestly so much more research that needs to be done on this. I will say that.
Thing we hear. That is a common thing we hear. Yes.
But one of the most common statistics I hear is that it's like a 2-to-1 ratio, and sometimes even a 3-to-1 ratio of women to men getting BPPV.
And why? And you know why?
So it's not a conclusive answer, but the leading causes that they think is due to hormonal fluctuations. So right when you're starting to have like premenopausal or during menopause, all those changes in hormones in your body is one thing that they have seen be affecting it, especially like when you look at the age groups of the women in that age group who are all going through through that at that similar age. So it's kind of like, and they talk about, you know, either an estrogen deficiency or like a drastic change in estrogen, because there's also a weird link, and not like there was a ginormous amount. There was a study done in Nebraska, and there wasn't like a giant amount of teenagers that had BBB, but out of the ones that did, it was majority girls. And if you can think about it, you know, they're starting to have their periods. They're just like going into womanhood. And, you know, that's a really big fluctuation in estrogen as well. So that's one of the leading ideas, I would say. You know, it's nothing's like set in stone, and there's so much more research that needs to be done. But
well, that's the window of time my mom was getting the vertigo, was that year of not having periods consistently right before her menopause day. And then we actually interviewed some menopause founders on the show, and they were bringing up, you know, one of the 35 menopause symptoms is vertigo. And I was like, what? Like,
wow.
And I was asking them like, why? And like most menopause symptoms, they're like, don't know, like not enough research. No one's funding it. Like, what? I really want to make like a FemTech, like labs, like
Yes.
research the stuff. Cause like, this is crazy. I can't keep interviewing people and asking them, well, why does this happen? And literally 9 out of 10 people say, well, I don't know. Like, no one's done the research. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. So, what are some of the solutions then? I guess this brings us kind of back to Cali balance. If it's not steroids, if we can't even see it, if, a huge thing that we struggle with at FemTech is like doctors not believing women. So maybe they're like, oh, you're just lightheaded or dizzy, you're not drinking enough or something, so like, what is the solution?
So basically, women, if you have vertigo and you go to your primary care or emergency care and they tell you go home, try again. Go to a specialist. Go to an ENT. Not all ENTs know about it either, I will say, but most of them do. Okay. And then physical therapists as well, and mostly physical therapists who they're specialists. I would say that there's physical therapists that are about like, your arms, your legs, that type of recovery, but there are like, different types of physical therapists that will know these exercises.
Okay. Well, that's really leading us into what's the cure, because I would have never thought physical therapy would help my inner ear. How would that help?
Yes. So there are exercises, there's maneuvers that you can actually do. So if you can think about it, what's happening in your inner ear is a physical thing. The calcium carbonate crystals are physically moving in your semicircular canals. So we can physically move them back where they're supposed to be, or at least out of the canals. So you're not experiencing this dizziness. Yeah.
Almost like that little pinball, like on a game. Like if you're trying to balance the game and put the ball in the holes, like that kind of.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly how it's like.
I get branded little games. Like that's what you give out as swag. Like
that would be cute.
That's cute.
Writing it down, memory bank.
So how do the physical therapists know like where in the head to go and like how to move the head?
That is probably one of the coolest things I got to learn over this journey. So pros and cons, they have to do a maneuver called the Dixall Pike. That's the expensive test. It's not expensive. It's literally them holding your head and kind of inducing vertigo. People will put you through an MRI and do all these like crazy expensive tests when the real test that they just need to do is the Dixall Pike. So they perform the Dixall Pike on you, and you're probably like Elizabeth. She was scared out of her mind, like, about just like I'm gonna fall, and he's like, no, I've got you. Like, so they're holding them and holding their head, and as they do this, they'll actually see something in your eye vibrating.
Shut up.
And yes, and it's called nystagmus. And so depending on whether it's upper to the side or lower and what eye it's on depends on what side you're experiencing BPPV and which canal in your inner ear the crystals are, which then tells you what exercise you have to do.
Wait, how are the physical therapists catching this person who's kind of falling backwards and looking at their eye that intensely without having to do it 50 times? Like,
so there's
do it?
One way that some of them do it is they just have like these goggle things that records their eyes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, and there's also some other like people who are working on that type of technology right now.
Okay.
And so that would kind of actually diagnose it a bit more.
Yeah. And do you have any idea about the history of this? Like, who the hell was like, hey, this person with vertigo, every time they lean back really fast, their left eye twitches up to the left. Like, what is the biology behind that?
So the main exercise that you do after the Dixall Pike is the Epley maneuver, and that is the most effective. It's, I feel like it's 80 to like somewhere in the mid 90% effective. Okay. And it's called the Epley maneuver, and there is a Dr. Epley that came up with it, and I think that he's one of the founders of that technique. And there's a lot of different maneuvers as well. So, but that would be I should look into that a bit more about that history. I think I looked into it a while back, but
Yeah, and usually investors don't ask you about the history. I'm just a weirdo podcast host who asks all these questions that founders are like, honestly, I've never thought about that. But do you know anything about the biology? Like, why would your eye twitch in a certain direction based on a deposit in your ear?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I don't. But I'm definitely going to ask one of my ENT friends.
Definitely do that. And Quinn, honestly, I would not be surprised if they say we don't know, but it works. Like, because that's just how FemTech usually works. So, all right, so they do this test where they kind of jolt the person backwards. They watch their eye flicker, and then they have to do what? What's the treatment? Now they found out maybe it's in the left ear, it's in a certain canal. How do they treat it?
Yeah, so they're probably going to start with the Epley maneuver. And they're going to there's 2 Epley maneuvers. There's one on your left side, there's one on your right side. And then they will perform the Epley maneuver. So it's mostly done like you're sitting up and you have to be brought down, and then your head has to be at certain angles for certain amounts of time. And like you have to be at those specific set angles. So, and the physical therapist, there's a lot of videos online. You'll see them holding the person's head, because at this point they're still dizzy. How can you expect them to keep their head at that right, correct angle?
Yeah. So for our listeners who are not watching the video recording of this, we essentially yoga for your neck, where you're like, left ear to left shoulder, right ear to right shoulder, and then back a little bit, and then forward a little bit, but much more scientific.
Yeah, and then add like
twitching, like it's not that easy. I know.
But like add like turn your head 45 degrees. And I'm like, wait a second, what is 45 degrees?
Yeah. And so these little tilts help get the calcium deposit back in the right spot. Does it usually cure vertigo, or is this something that like disproportionately women have to deal with like forever and like continue to go back?
So it's really, really different for every single person. But there is a recurrence rate of BPPV, which is really unfortunate. But it's like, let me see where it says that. Yeah, 20 to 30 to even 50% of people who have experienced BPPV will experience it again.
Wow.
And so one of the things that a physical therapist or an ENT might suggest to their patient is, hey, here, I've helped you today, but over the next couple of days, I want you to do this 3 times a day. And they give them that type of like prescription. So now imagine this person who is dizzy having to go home and do these exercises by themselves. And I will tell you, there are so many resources online, free resources. But if you can also imagine, like when you're doing yoga online, like you're looking up at the screen every 5 seconds to see what they're doing.
Yeah.
These exercises are about keeping your head at a specific angle for a certain amount of time.
So it doesn't even make sense to watch a YouTube video because it's about like not looking up or like staying still.
Yeah.
Oh, it's counterproductive. Okay.
Yeah. So I will not, I can tell you that some people are going to be able to do it correctly at home, but like, what about all the other people who can't?
Yeah.
Or who are too scared to do it by themselves?
And that's where Cali Balance comes in.
That is exactly where Cali Balance comes in.
So
Cali Balance so Cali Balance is a wearable device that tracks the angle of your head and lets you know when you're in the right position and when you're in the wrong position using haptic feedback. And it also talks you through the exercises.
So last time I saw it was like this really cool little like half head band, like really big headphones, like in today's world, big headphones, right? Because we have like these little you can't see, but the headphones I grew up with, but it's on the back of your head and it kind of buzzes when you move your head in a certain angle. So is it still looking like that today?
That is our first prototype, but we are currently working on our second prototype. We're going to be able to slim it down and make a lot of really cool upgrades to it. So,
oh my gosh, so cool. What would be like if you were able to wave a magic wand and get like funding for Vertigo, like what's your number one like research question you wish that they would look into first?
Oh, what a wonderful question. I mean, there's more information about all of the people who are suffering from this, you
Yeah.
know,
Mm-hmm.
because I have a sliver, and it's so hard to actually come up with that number because there are so many different sources that say so many different things.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a real struggle to actually get a good statistic. And they've been evolving, like, it's been evolving over the past couple of years. Like, you'll see if you watch my Bayou Startup Showcase, I think my amount of people has changed, because one, because it's growing, two, because my statistics are changing and I'm getting less or more information that isn't like directly aligned. So I want more research done on how many people are really affected by this.
Yeah.
Start in the United States, and how many people are living with this undiagnosed. I mean, it's not almost about just research, but it's about like education.
Mm-hmm.
I at someday I want it BPPV to be as well known as a concussion. You go to the emergency care, and you're like, okay, this person is dizzy. Do they have a concussion? They have a list of questions to say, like, are you concussed? And then they have a list of questions. Okay, so they don't have a concussion. What do they have? BPPV, And there's actually another like market of athletes who suffer from BPPV. If you can imagine, you know, a soccer player who heads the ball 10
Yeah.
times a day or more is suffering from BPPV, and they don't, it's just not known. It's not one of the top things that they're like, oh no, you probably just have a concussion. It's like, it could be BPPV. You should look into it.
And then they could probably go back to playing if they just had this little maneuver of their head instead of like taking months out suffering.
Exactly.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so what I hear you saying is like research on the public health and the, prevalence in the
Yes.
literally just the prevalence of it. So it's so crazy how that's like, that's a pretty basic question, like,
Yes.
even
I know.
say like some like neurological, you're just like, yeah, all I want to know is who has it. Like, that's all I want to know. Because I know a lot of people do. So yeah, wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Well, Quinn, this is so much fun talking with you. I love seeing you grow over these years, from having, found you in a parking lot outside an event.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you two last questions that our listeners love. The first one is, if someone wanted to start a FemTech company, what's an area in women's health and wellness that you think still needs innovating?
Okay, so I would say sex education for middle school and high school students.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I was probably like 11 or 12, I went to a British school, and I got, I got to have that conversation with the nurse. All the girls went to the nurse, and then all the guys went, I don't even know who they talked to, maybe the PE
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah.
But, we had that conversation right at 12. I had high school junior year in America, and um, the sex education chapter was skipped.
Just
So
on like just go buy it. Next.
yeah, yeah, and it's just like I want it to not be an awkward conversation that parents have to have with their kids. I want it to be something like a resource, even if it was an application, but like a safe place for boys and girls to learn about sex, not in an awkward way, not through porn, not through porn. I
Yeah.
mean, uh, go for it for whoever likes it, but like men learning that that's what sex is not really great, or girls too as well. That type of expectation. So that's something that I think would be so important.
100%.
To just
So one of
yeah.
the things that I I think about this a lot too. And, we have kind of a youth goal at FemTech Focus as well, in terms of like, how can we target the youth, right? So we'd have to do less education of adults if we educate them young. But what I always find to be the biggest barrier is when you are trying to target youth, you usually need the parents' approval first. And so that like sales cycle or the marketing cycle is like really hindered on like, well, how do the parents feel about it? And then you got the whole issue of market, barriers of Facebook saying, you can't say that, or the App Store saying, you can't have an app that does that, And so what I'm not saying that is a bad idea, because it is actually one of the best ideas is sex education. But, man, anyone who's like working on it, God bless you. God bless you. Because I think about it a lot, and I think about all the barriers, and I'm like, oh, please let there be some very, very strong people out there working hard on this. And I think it has to do with policy change too, right?
Yeah.
Well, we just got our new Congress sworn in, and it's the record highest number of women ever, 121 women. Yeah.
Woo-woo!
Yeah, highest ever. So awesome. More uteri in the house, and we will get more uteri funding is my hope. And then our last question, Quinn, is what do you think the femtech industry as a whole needs the most right now in order to be successful?
I would say support for the femtech community. Talk to people about these things. Normalize saying period. Normalize saying, I know you do this all the time on the podcast. Normalize these daily, monthly, yearly natural things that are happening to half the population. And of course, I feel like I've heard this multiple times, but it's like, investors, open up your ears and be willing to learn about these niche markets that aren't so niche, that you just don't know about. So just be open to learn. So
I love that. Normalizing the V word, right? I actually just was mentoring another founder today on her pitch deck, and she's making yoga pants that have material that are healthy for your vagina.
Nice.
So vaginal health priority yoga pants. And she says she keeps getting feedback from investors and mentors saying, maybe like you just say vaginal like too much. Maybe we could like leave that part out. And she's like, then they're just yoga pants. Like that's the whole point. Like, and she said, but you know what? I hear it so often that sometimes I go to bed at night wondering, like, am I saying vagina too much? And she's like, no, I'm not. Like, that's their problem. We have to say the V word, y'all.
Yes. Yeah. I remember that at the FemTech Focus, or it was the FemTech Weekend Challenge. What was that called?
Oh, innovation hackathon thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mariana, one of your interns, I remember they were talking about their startup, right, that they're still working on. And I remember like her talking about that, and I was like, you got to say it like you mean it.
Wait, Mariana hesitated saying vagina?
No, I think she was fine with it, but I'm trying to remember how that really conversation went, and like,
because she's come she's come so far.
Oh yeah, no, but I just remember hearing like one of their first pitches about that, and it's like, hey, let's, don't shy around anything,
You got to just say it. Man, Quinn, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time today. I am really excited to see you continue. This is obviously really important to us because FemTech is not just about periods and vaginas. It's about things that disproportionately or differently affect women, and vertigo, obviously, on the disproportionate side. And if it has anything to do with menopause, then for sure, it's a FemTech issue, and we are excited to have highlighted it today. So thanks for what you do.
Yeah, of course.